All right, here's a topic that came up. I was messaging on WhatsApp this morning with an online member, and it came up about a non-specific sport athlete doing plyometrics. And I actually believe strongly that non-sport athletes are the ones who should be doing plyometrics most, meaning team sport athletes like me for basketball are already doing so much plyometrics. Yesterday I did 100 dunks. I do not have to do any plyometrics because that is such intense plyometrics. But there's two interesting circumstances here that I do like people to do plyometrics. One, if you're not actively participating in a specific sport, because you can do all this work on your muscles and build an ideal muscular structure, and yes, your tendons will adapt to some degree, but there's actually, if you go and you actually look through literature and physics, there's actually a lot more load on your tendons from things like jumps and decelerations. So in sports, just like a kid playing soccer is more force on his joints than he'll ever experience in the weight room. I know that seems a little bit confusing right now, but you'll just have to take my word for it that even if you do a perfect job in the weight room, your tendons, the things that hold your muscles to the bones, your Achilles tendon, your patellar tendons, you even have gluteal tendons, there's even tendons in your feet. These things, to get adequately stimulated, do actually need some live movement. And what can happen is someone can do a perfect job in the weight room but not be as healthy as they could be since they're not doing anything plyometric. In sports, the plyometrics usually gets out of whack, meaning they're doing it too much or they're doing it one-sided all the time, like an athlete who jumps only off one leg and not the other. This creates problems. So most people think of plyometrics as something risky that creates problems, but this video I'm showing you how you can actually use plyometrics to be therapeutic and to be as healthy as possible. So considering I did 100 jumps yesterday, considering this is supposed to be an off day for me, other than being in Florida, I'm cold, meaning I'm not coming off of some workout, I figured it'd be a perfect chance to show you what I recommend once a week for non-team sport athletes, and I'll also give you some ideas of how team sport athletes might use this as well. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna turn my toes slightly out. I'm just gonna get into a comfortable stance there, and I'm gonna get 100 of these bottom quarter squats. And what I'm doing is I'm thinking with my Achilles and my knees. So I'm giving a little Achilles lift, a little knee lift. What I'm doing here is I'm getting blood flow. I'm gonna do 100 of these, and the reason is because it takes a lot longer to get blood flow to the tendons than it does to the muscles. So if you do 100 of these, you'll probably actually feel like a really good burn in your muscles and have like rubber legs from your muscles being tired out. And that's a good thing because as the plyometric workout progresses, that burn and fatigue in your muscles is gonna wear off and you're gonna have more blood flow in your tendons. So it's interesting that you could take a basketball player, have him do this before a game, which seems like it would tire him out, but after a 15-minute layup line warm-up, the fatigue would be gone, and in the game he'd get even bouncier. So 100 is just a rough mark. I'm starting to feel a nice burn in my quads now. I have to remember to be pushing through those calves a little bit. So I'm lifting with my knees, lifting. So ankles and knees lifting. I don't know what I'm at. I'll count it back when I watch this tape. But I am burning up, so I'll just get like 20 more. It's just one set, so I mean, really get a burn. I'm thinking to lift with those ankles, knees. Oh, crazy burn. And now when I go into my first drill, my legs are gonna be tired from the muscles, but I at least started getting some blood into the tendons. We're looking at 4 layers of skipping. Skipping is the first plyometric I like for non-athletes because it keeps you balanced and anyone can do it at any level. So I'm gonna take about 15 long steps that way so that you can stay right there, so that I'm working at about a 30 meter, so about the size of a basketball court. So I'm gonna go past the camera about 15 meters to give it the best looking space. 4 levels of skipping. The first level, all I'm doing is thinking about my arms. If you've never skipped at all, it's a heel toe, little jump right there. And the landing is easy because I'm jumping on one foot and I'm starting to brace the landing with the toe before I go to the other foot. All I'm thinking about is my arms. doing this for you on a camera, when you're doing this yourself, I would like you to go 30 meters one direction and then walk back and repeat like that. So what I'm doing here, I'm still on level 1 of skipping. I'm thinking with my arms. As I think with my arms more, you'll see me get just a little bit higher. My arms, I'm thinking to lift myself. So there I tried to lift myself, just thinking with my arms. The next thing I'll try to do is lift myself a little bit higher. So I started, we're going in reverse order. I started by using the shoulder joint to lift me. Now I'm gonna go to the hips. So now with the hips, I'm gonna try to lift with my hip flexor. And by driving one hip flexor, it's gonna cause me also to push with the glute. So as I lift that hip flexor without realizing it, I'm really stimulating a harder glute contraction. So that's all I'm gonna think about now. I start with my arms. Now, so I think with my right, left, right. So there, I was just thinking with my hip flexors. So when I'm here, I'm thinking with the right one to lift me, and then the left one to lift me. And I recommend this once a week. And if you feel like there's different pains in your body at first, that's what we do the weight room training for, but that's also, you might be missing out on this because maybe the muscles are developing fine, but maybe you have imbalances in your tendons. So when you do this once a week, you're actually doing something really therapeutic. You're giving yourself a long time to recover. So from the hips, then I would think to the knees. So now I'm gonna start, rather than think about the arms, rather than think about the lift with the hip flexor, I'm gonna actually think basically with my leg to really start pushing down into the ground. So I'll start right, so I'm pushing with the left, right, left, right. And then the final step, I'll actually think through my ankle. I'll think to push all the way and extend that ankle. And now putting all this together, I'll be getting a maximum height skip for myself, which is now creating some serious plyometric forces. But since I'm skipping, it's keeping it balanced on my body, rather than if you just go out and try to dunk only off a specific leg. Now, you'll see why that would lead to injuries. You end up with imbalances. So I'm thinking all the way through the ankle on this one. So left ankle, right ankle, left ankle, right ankle, left ankle, right ankle. And then, the next drill I like, it's so easy to get into it, is bounding. Bounding, if we had to give it a definition, if skipping means jumping on one leg and landing on the same leg, then jumping on the other leg, landing on the same leg, this is skipping. Bounding means going back and forth. And what we're talking about here, what will distinguish it for us from running, is it would be going back and forth on the heel. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go on your right. Yep, we're gonna go on the heel and we're gonna think about one thing, which is just the quickness of the foot. You go back to where you were? Mm-hmm. So all I'm thinking is to go back and forth between feet, but I'm spending as little time on the ground as possible. And if even all that was that, that's a drill. That's a drill, it's little time. But then I want to start getting trying to get far. So whereas skipping we were using as a real gradual warm-up, thinking about using the arms and using the hip flexors and then actually pushing with the knees and with the ankles. With this drill, we're just thinking about two things: quickness of the step and how far the step goes. Because you're already warm, I'd rather have you get warm with skipping, which is less aggressive than bounding. Because with the skip, when I jump, I'm then just landing, boom, I'm landing, and I'm bracing the land to go into the next leg. Whereas with bounding, I'm not bracing for the next leg. It's right into another jump. So it's more force that I'm trying to rebound. So here I'll go back and actually get a real set. And with all these, when in doubt, unless you're like a track athlete and have a ton of experience with it, start light, and as your set continues, you can pick up speed. So all I'm thinking about is quickness of the step, quick, and then I'm trying to get, how far can I get? So what'll happen over time is you'll start to feel those springs in your tendons, that it's not just muscles that you're dealing with anymore. You're actually starting to train the tendons which make you free. And this happens over time. So if you can imagine, when I used to play basketball and the coach would then make us do suicide runs, just the deceleration from that used to give me shin splints. And it wasn't until I started training my tibials, training my calves, but also doing things like bounding for the tendons. So now my strength of my muscles and strength of the tendons is beyond what I need to play basketball, and then I no longer get those pains. So usually I'm dealing with athletes who are overtrained on plyometrics, overtrained on it because of their sport. They're already doing so much of it. So it often slips my mind, and that's what came to my mind this morning, that I thought, man, I gotta just go shoot this. Thankfully, my wife is a legend, so she's holding the camera right now on a Sunday, family day. So if you're not getting any tendon stimulus, you're actually not fully getting the ATG results. So it's time that I start giving gradual progressions. So I would say, if you're worried that you're not getting any tendon stimulus, once a week, start this little routine. Get things warm first. Gradually skip using about 30 meters. You could go longer. If I just had to give you a rough thing, I would say more duration at less intensity. You know, like if I just now, a skip is just a jump. So if I go to dunk all out, that's just one singular skip expressed at maximum force, which would give you more chance of knee pain if you weren't ready for it. So when in doubt, I'll have her just watch me. I'll show a set of skipping. I decided to bound back for the fuck of it, to not make you wait there. But what I did is I did a set of skips until I felt like I was actually getting fatigued. Because what you'll find that's really interesting, when you start getting into your plyometric training right, you have an interesting realization. And this is how I've come to be able to dunk in basketball games and stuff like this. It's your tendons, they don't tire out like muscles do. Just how it takes more blood flow to get to the tendon than the muscle, because it relies on less blood, it basically can keep lasting. How does a basketball player in the fourth quarter sometimes do his highest jump, even if his muscles are tired? Because he can throw that force on his tendons, even if the muscles are tired. So when I was skipping there, I'm able to get good quality jumps over and over and over, because I'm thinking with the springiness instead of just using my muscles. But this is a quality you train like anything else. It's very interesting when I've trained guys who have very high verticals. But if one of those guys built that vertical in the weight room through traditional squats and deadlifts, and the other guy has it naturally and hasn't done as much weight training, when they go dunk together, it's always like, why the fuck does the natural guy not tire out? How can he keep jumping so high? And it's because oftentimes he's jumping more with his tendons. So if you start out with a natural 20-inch vertical, another guy's a 40, how do you think his tendons are? He's got twice the tendons of you. So even if he has that freakish strength naturally, and you get the same strength as him, your tendons are still down here, you're still susceptible to more pains, and you can kind of get a glimpse into the secret of why I found that in these explosive repetitive sports like soccer or basketball or football, where you have to be explosive but throughout over hours at a time, how are guys still so springy at the end? Because even once I got to where I could dunk, it was only when I wasn't tired. If I was tired at all, my vertical was so much lower. And now I can catch my breath, and it doesn't really matter how like fatigued my legs get. I can still get near that height because I can go slam that force on the tendons. So I would say, and I'll probably be able to work with you on an individual basis to give an idea, but it would be safer to do a longer set than to try to go too intensely for a short set. So for starters, go out and start skipping and warm it up with those 4 steps. Arms, then hips, then knees, then ankles. Then get into your bounding until you feel like you're getting quick and far. Then give yourself a little break, get the farthest you can, or I've even had people go, if it's a basketball court where you're limited, you can just go back and forth and do 1 set of skipping to the point where you're running out of oxygen, like you're fatigued, not like the springs aren't there. So do a set until it's like cardio and you're fatigued. Because what's happening is another little trick from my mentor, one of my mentors, Charles Poliquin, which is you tire out the muscle sometimes before plyometrics. It's a dirty little trick, because if you don't have as much muscle, now you force yourself to start relying on the tendons. So I want you to get 1 set to tap out on skipping. Take a few minute break. Don't come back the way I did on the bounding. And then get 1 set to tap out bounding. Do that once a week. Man, watch yourself start to feel that springiness. Then if you do go out and play some recreational sports, don't be surprised if midway through, once that blood starts getting to your tendons, you have more tendon ability. And also don't be surprised if it starts working out, maybe things that no matter how much weight room work, it seems like one knee or one ankle is a little bit tighter than the other. Well, if you're worried about ankle mobility, the Achilles is the biggest tendon in your body. So if the Achilles is the biggest tendon in your body and your body doesn't trust that thing, you might stay stiffer. That's the same reason we do strength through length. So also be working on your tendons. Do not overdo it. And if you are a team sport athlete, the only place I really recommend these is, 1, is to do them lightly as warm-ups, never working through pain. So you can do this as a warm-up before playing. And number 2 would be, say you are that guy who built up a ton of natural strength, and now you're going out and you're working on dunking, and you're not having knee pain. You don't feel like it's a lack of strength, but even though your strength number is high, you're not jumping as high as you think you should be. You're probably a perfect candidate after that sprint session or jump session or team practice, whatever it is. Get 1 of those sets of skips and 1 of those sets of bounds once a week to tap out, where you're forcing the tendon, forcing it to adapt, and watch your springiness start to go up. Now I want to get my set of bounding in. That's all for this video, but I'm feeling bouncy.